Hello, welcome. My name is Amanda Craig, and this is the Challenge A Latin Boot Camp for students. It is my assumption that you are probably entering Challenge A sometime in the future, or if you could be entering a different level of challenge, and this is your first experience with Latin or Henley Latin. And that's why you're taking this short summer video course. It's going to be short. I'm only going to go over the first couple of weeks of what you would learn, but you're like, wait, I thought it was a boot camp. I don't want to overwhelm you with a bunch of information over the summer that you don't necessarily need, because your director and your parent or teacher is going to go through the material over the year, and it goes nice and slow, and you'll be able to learn it throughout the year. So you don't need to learn it all this summer if your parent or teacher is not making you do that. So we're going to get started with the Latin Boot Camp. Couple of disclaimers. One is I practice my vocabulary, but that doesn't mean that I'm very good at pronouncing all the words. So I'm going to do my best, but don't take it as this is absolutely the pronunciation. There's better ways to learn the pronunciation than from me. So that's one thing. I don't know how to roll my R's. That's one thing I keep trying to do, and it's really hard for me. So pronunciation. The second thing is your parents probably came here from my website. And on my website, I'll share my screen. All right. On my website, this link will be active by the time you get to it. You go to that link, it is going to, there's a link for the Challenge A Bootcamp worksheets. If you don't have a printer, you don't already have these printed, there is an opportunity for you to pause the video and write it down on a piece of paper. So you can do that because all the materials also on the video that I'm going to show you. So, all right, we're going to get started with the slideshow. And it moves. Hold on a sec. All right. First, we're going to talk about what we're going to cover today. All right, a brief review about what you already know about English. We're going to look at some sentences, parse them together. Introduction to noun cases, declensions, and the first declension. That's going to be in Latin. Using your English to help with Latin. The use of verbs in Latin. The accusative case. How to translate an English sentence into Latin and vice versa. And tips. How to make a Latin vocabulary card. And what your Challenge A assignments are going to look like. All right, so let's look at, here are some basic English sentences, and we're going to talk about what you already know about them. So we have Mary praises the sailor. I love Mary. We love Mary. You praise sailors. I baked Mary a cake. I baked a cake for Mary. I gave Mary the gift. I gave the gift to Mary. So let's just start with this first one. If you come from CC's Essentials, you know that we spend a lot of time parsing a sentence. Parsing a sentence means talking about what parts of speech are being used in the sentence and how they're being used, like such as the noun usage, like what role is the noun being used in the sentence. And other things that we know about the sentence. If you ever use the quid et quo in English, that's a very, analyzing the different words, using that quid et quo is a very valuable skill that you'll use in Latin. So Mary praises the sentence. If you did Essentials and you know about the question confirmation, we asked some questions in order to figure out some of the things about the sentence. The first question we asked is, who or what is the sentence about? The sentence is about Mary. So she's our subject. We know that Mary, what else do we know about Mary? We know that Mary is a noun. We know that we're using Mary in the third person. And we know that Mary is singular, that there's just one Mary. So that's what we know about Mary. Mary is doing what? What is being said about Mary? Mary praises. So we know that praises is the verb. It's right there in the middle of the sentence. Mary praises who or what? And that's going to give us our direct object. And that's sailor. Sailor is a noun. It's our direct object. Singular, third person. That's what we know about sailor. We also know that sailor is a common noun. It could be any sailor. And Mary is a proper noun. It's naming a specific person, so it's a proper noun. So now we just talked about what we know about all the words. Praises also, it's a verb, it's transitive. We know that it's third person, and one of the reasons why we know it's third person is because Mary is third person, and so the verb has to be third person as well. It's singular because it modifies Mary, which is also singular. So the verb is very connected to Mary. The other thing that we notice about the sentence is we know that Mary praises the sailor. We know that the sentence usually starts with the subject, and we know that, you know, the indirect object's usually here in the middle, and the direct object's over here. We have set English sentence patterns that you may have learned about in your grammar program. So this would be an SVT-DO. Well, we're going to talk about that later in Latin, but that gets thrown out in Latin. We'll talk about that in a minute. So I talked about how Mary's third person. So here I've got some examples of some other ones. I've got I, we. Those are first person subjects, and they're pronouns. So I is first person, singular. This is first person, plural. You, it could be, whoops. You is either singular or it could be plural. That's you all, you guys. So there's three different, so we've talked about, so when you're talking about person, we've talked about number singular or plural. And then we've talked about usages. So we've got, this also is SVT-DO. We've got I, love, who or what, Mary. So that's the sentence pattern for all that is SVT-DO for these 4 sentences right here. Let's move on to here. I baked Mary a cake. Same sentence pattern. No, not the same sentence pattern. It starts with the same sentence pattern. I baked a cake. That's SVT-DO. Subject, verb transitive. Cake is direct object. And then we've added who or what. Or who or to what. And that's Mary. So Mary is our indirect object. Now, I'm going to show you something a little bit different. I baked Mary a cake. I baked a cake for Mary. Now in English, you can see that these have the same general meaning, right? You baked a cake for Mary. I baked Mary a cake. Same general meaning. But in English, when we talk about for Mary, that's not an indirect object. That is a prepositional phrase. But the reason why I'm bringing this up now is in Latin, the indirect object is called the to-for case. So you can see here, I've got for Mary, and then I gave Mary the gift. I gave the gift to Mary. So in Latin, you can use the words to and for. They have the same meaning, but in English, we call these prepositional phrases that they are acting kind of as the indirect object, but in Latin, they actually will be the indirect object. So just a little heads up on that. So in English, word order is important. It will help you decipher how the words are being used in the sentence. So that's something about English. But in Latin, that is not the case. So we're going to talk about Latin noun cases. In Latin, the word order doesn't necessarily matter. You're going to determine the usage of the noun in a sentence based on its ending. So there's going to be a lot of different endings. And if you come from CC, you might have already learned these. These are going to be in your noun declensions. So I'm trying to think of one of the songs, like second declension is us-e-o-um-o, us-e-o-um-o. Those are your endings that you're going to put on a noun for the second declension. You've got first declension, second declension. There's a total of 5. So we'll get to that in a second. But first we have to know what noun usages are going to get what ending. And so there's 5 main noun cases. And the Latin changes the ending of its noun based on how it's used in the sentence. So we had Mary loves the sailor. Mary was the subject of the sentence. So in Latin, we're going to call that nominative. Nominative comes from the Latin nomen, which means name. And so we're going to name what the sentence is about, nominative. The subject, and then and it's translated the or just Mary, Mary, a sailor, the sailor, something like that. Next word that we have in Latin case is genitive, and that's the possessive case. So if you have Mary's sailors or the sailors of Mary, it's either the of case or the apostrophe s case. So you can use either one of these when you're translating it, and it will be correct. Either saying, you know, the book of Amanda or Amanda's book. Both are correct translations. And it's showing possession. So that's the genitive case. Dative is the indirect object. Like I mentioned before, it's the to or for case. But you can also translate it, I baked Mary a cake. That's a fine translation. That's good English. You could also translate it, I baked a cake for Mary. In Latin, that's when you see the endings for dative, it could be the to, for case. Accusative, which we're going to talk about more later, that's the direct object. So Mary loves the sailor. You're going to put the ending of the accusative on for the direct object. And they're translated the same as the or a, because they're just words. Mary loves the sailor. Mary loves a sailor. Ablative is the object of the preposition. Now, this is a little tricky because accusative is also sometimes used with prepositions. So you'll learn about more later, but actually the accusative and the ablative are used for objects of the preposition. But if you have a preposition that uses the ablative, it's the by, with, from case. You might say, by the town. And then that word town is going to be in the ablative case. So, and there's 10 different endings for each declension because you're going to have them for the singular and the plural. All right. There's 5 declensions in Latin, and each declension will have different endings for each of them in both the singular and the plural. So it's a total of 10 endings per declension. And if you're wondering, like, there's all these vocabulary words and they're going to be in different declensions. Well, why there's so many different declensions? Why couldn't you put them all in one declension? I don't know the answer to that. But when you're learning your vocabulary, you're going to learn which declension it is. And that's how you're going to know where you're going to put which set of endings you're going to use for that word. So you're going to use some endings for the word terra, which means land, and you're going to use different endings for servus, which means slave. So because they're in 2 different declensions. So you're just going to learn in the vocabulary which declension they're in, but for when you start Latin out, you're only learning the first declension. So these are the first declension noun endings. If I remember the song correctly, it goes I, east, os, east. I don't think I got the tune right, but that was there's a little jingle. And I have links on my website back to those jingles on YouTube. If you want to review those over the summer, that would be good to learn all the first declension jingles from CC, even if you've never done CC before. And then also learning those verb conjugation, OSD, must assent. You'll get to those later in Challenge A when you do more with verbs. But if you learn those 2 in those songs, that will help you. Then you'll just be able to kind of sing them. And they'll always be in this order: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative in the singular, and then nominative, plural, genitive, dative. So if you're going through the list, you got to think about, like, where does it, you know, that's the 4th one down, that's accusative. So you kind of have to remember this order that they're in. But one of the things you're going to be doing when you first start is you're going to be copying this chart to help you learn all the endings. So that's important. And you're going to be using them a lot in vocabulary words. So the endings will come easily. But until you have them memorized, it's okay to use the chart right in front of you. But if you, eventually the goal would be for you to memorize it. And once you memorize it, that will make your exercises in Latin go much easier. Those are the endings. Okay. Now, here is an example. Terra, terrae, land, earth, feminine. Other thing I didn't mention yet is that all the Latin nouns have genders. We don't really use genders in English, and we've got genders, like if it refers to, like, you know, if it's a boy or a man or a king, that's masculine. or if it's a woman, a queen, that's feminine. And then if it's an object, then it's just neuter. But we don't really need to know that when we're writing or using English sentences. But in Latin, the gender does become important. Not so much right now, but you will need to learn the gender because later you'll be using it when you use adjectives. So the different adjectives have different endings based on the gender. So just go ahead, when you're learning your vocabulary, go ahead and learn that it's feminine. And there's rules for knowing which gender it is that you'll learn. It's okay. All right, so when you have a vocabulary word, you're going to have tera, teri. This is the nominative word, and this is the nominative singular, and this is the genitive singular. You can see those endings right there, a, I. And it's always going to be listed in the vocabulary this way. And this blue part right here, I'm pointing, let me get my pointer. This blue part, that's the stem. And the way that you're going to find the stem for every single Latin word, you're going to take the ending, whoops, come back. You're going to take the ending of the genitive, you're going to slice off the ending, and what's left is the stem. So there's the stem for teri. And then you take the stem and you just apply the ending on each one. And then like from the beginning with the nominative, terra, land, the land, of the land, lands, to or for the land, lands, by, with, from the land. And then over here, I just added an S on all of them. Oops, forgot an S on that one. But that is, those are all the plurals. These are the plural endings. So you're going to do this for all the vocabulary words. One of your very first exercises you do, I think, is you're going to decline all the nouns in your vocabulary. And you're just going to take the stem and you're just going to add these endings. It's very repetitive. And then, of course, the meanings will be different because you'll be using different words. All right. Using your English with Latin. So we're going to look at the sentence again. Mary loves the sailor. Now I just went ahead and put in the verb because we're just talking about nouns right now with the declension. So what did we already say what we knew about Mary? We know that it's a noun. She's the subject of the sentence and it's singular. So A is our subject ending. The nominative ending is A. So we've got the stem and then we put on the A. Come over here to the direct object, noun singular, not am. Am is the accusative, the direct object ending. So we put am. Now, I put it in order like this. So how you'll usually see it is verbs are usually actually the last thing in the sentence. So you usually will see Maria natam amat. And normally, they're not out to confuse you. So normally the subject is pretty close to the middle of the sentence. But then you just kind of have to look for the rest of the sentence to look at the endings to kind of figure out what they are. So we know that's accusative. So we know that that is the direct object. But if this ending had like the dative ending on it, which is indirect object, then we would know that the sailor was the indirect object and not the direct object. So you just got to look at those endings to know how it's being used in the sentence. And here you see I've got the same exact words, but now I've switched them. A sailor loves Mary. And now we've got nata is the subject, and Mariam is the direct object. And again, the word order could be mixed up, so you have to look at the endings to know how they're being used in the sentence. That's how the endings are used. But you can see my verbs are the same, and that is because that is a third person ending, the T, O-S-T. T is third person singular, so that's why they're the same, because both of those subjects are third person singular. But you'll learn more about the verbs later. All right, so here's worksheet number 1, and this is where you're going to stop the video, and you're going to work on this. Now, there's a couple things that you might want to do. If you have your Latin books already, in your blue Latin book, looks like this. You can look in my corner of the blue Latin book. If you open to page, let me find it. Did not know that I was going to talk about this. I did not already have it pulled. Oh, my page is missing. Oh, here it is. Sorry. To rule number 31, which is one of the first grammar rules you're going to put. It's on page 5. I use it so much that it fell out of the book. On page 5, if you want to work on the worksheet while using this, it shows you the endings, so you'll be able to tell what form they are. If you don't have your blue book, you might want to just go back to the video to where the endings are, because what you're going to do in this is, here's the example, teram. That ending is accusative. It's singular. So that's telling you what form it is. It's accusative singular, and it means lands or the lands. And you're just going to do that for every single one of these, and then we're going to discuss them. And you're going to give them meanings. All right, not just give them meaning. Don't just tell me that terra means land. Give them meanings for, if you were to use it in the accusative, what could the meaning be? And again, that's all right here in this chart. All right, so pause, and then the next slide will have the vocabulary words. If you need the vocabulary words, if you've got your purple Latin book, if you downloaded my worksheet, it's on my worksheet. If you have your purple Latin book, they're on page 7. Or if you go to the next slide, if you want to pause your video on this screen, those are all the vocabulary words that are used in the worksheet. Okay, so this is where I'm going to stop talking. You're going to pause the video and you're going to come back when you're done. Okay, I assume that you paused the video, and now we're back, and we're going to talk about the answers. Worksheet 1, answers. Tell what cases these nouns are and give their meanings. Hint, some might have multiple cases. That was our example. Teram, it's the accusative. The am indicates to us that it's accusative, singular, land, lands. Selvas, that is accusative plural, so it could mean forest or the forests. Not a ram, that is genitive, it's plural, so it's of the sailors, or it's sailors apostrophe. Porta, now this A does not have a line over it, so that's a nominative singular, and it means gate or gates. Selvas, this could be two different things. Dative plural, to or for the forest, and ablative plural, by, with, from the forest. Now, how do you know which one to use? They have the same ending. And the answer to that is it will be apparent to you on how to translate it, because you're going to try to translate it into good English. So if it says, Caesar marched his army to the forest, that makes a little more sense than Caesar marched his army from the forest. Caesar marched his army with the forest. I mean, with the forest, that doesn't make sense. By the forests, to the forests, for the forests. You're just gonna, I didn't pick a very good example, but it'll be more apparent that you're gonna try to translate it into good English. So I would probably say Caesar marched his soldiers maybe by the forest. That might make this no sense. So it's not always going to be apparent. Sometimes word order will matter where it's in the sentence. Like normally the indirect object is before the accusative, and prepositional phrases are sometimes after. So it'll be pretty apparent, but just try to translate sentences. Don't worry too much about it. But just try to translate it into the best English that you can. But as your parents go through the answer key, you'll find that there could be a lot of different answers. It's not going to be a perfect translation every time. You can't be stuck on every single word. So, all right, here's another one that has 3 different possibilities. Genitive singular, of the glory or glories. Dative singular, that would be an indirect object to or for the glory. And nominative plural, glories or the glories. I will say that the indirect object are normally people, less often things. So normally the indirect object are people. And normally the nominative plural, it would be at the start of the sentence. Victoria. Now this one, I might have tricked you. This one has the A, the line above it, the macron over it. So it's not nominative, it's ablative singular, by, with, from the victory. All right, that was worksheet number 1. If you have any questions, and I'll say this again at the end, but if you have any questions, you can contact me via my email address, which is amanda.craig@gmail.com, or it's on my website. You can contact me through my website. So if what I'm saying in the video does not make sense, just have your parents contact me, because I'd be more than happy to try to explain it in a different way, or try to help you one-on-one if you need help. All right, use of verbs. You're going to get into a lot of verb knowledge later in the first semester, but right now they're going to go ahead and just give you the word and tell you what it means without you having to worry about the endings and things like that. So in Latin, the pronouns I, we, you, and this actually is just all straight from the Henley Latin text. When they're used as the subject as the verb and they're not expressed separately, they're contained in the ending of the verb. So if you're looking at a sentence and there is no nominative at all, then it probably means that you're going to use a pronoun that's contained in the ending. So the two that they first teach you about that are given in your vocab, orat, the T is he, she, it. So this one means he, she, it praise. I think the first ones you learn are orat, orant, which, and again, I'm probably not pronouncing these right. The NT means they pray. So this AT, or just the T, means he, she, it, and the NT, ANT, means they. So you see that. So when you're starting to look, you'll see those too. So AT contains 3 English pronouns: he, she, it. Which one do you use? If you've been talking about a woman, you would say she prays. If you're talking about a man, then it's he prays. But if you don't know, you can just use he, and that's fine. If you're translating something, you don't know who it is, you don't have to say he, she, it prays, like on each translation, just use he, that's fine. All right. So here, this is a sentence. There is no subject, and so the subject is here in the T, he prays. Here, the subject is in the NT, they pray. So here there is, again, no subject. So you've got Mariam. Now this one, it could confuse you if you're not looking at your endings carefully. But if you're looking at this ending, the AM, that's accusative. So you know that's the direct object. So the NT is they. This word means see. So it's they see Mary. And then we know we're talking about Mary, so it's she is praying. There's several that she is praying, she prays, she does pray. Like those are all present tense ways of saying it in English, so any of those would be acceptable translations. When a noun is used as a subject, the pronoun is not translated in English. So now we're going to start to see our nominative endings come back. So AE, that's a nominative ending. The sailors pray. And you know that you see that this is plural. And so your ending has to be plural too. So it's the NT ending, so it's plural. Maria prays. Maria orat. Mary prays. Again, this is singular, so we have the T as the ending. You notice in the sentence, Natan Maria, or in the nominative case. Notice when the subject is singular, Maria, the singular he, she, it form of the verb orat is used. When the subject is plural, natai, the plural they form of the verb orant is used. So starting with lesson 1, they're going to give you both the third person singular and the third person form of every verb. So you're going to have orat, orant, read it, readent, ladat, which that means sees. You saw it in here. Laudant is he, she, it praises, and he, she, it, and they pray. So you just start with those verbs to start with. All right. Now, when you do, I'm just going to go over a couple of the rules. When you are looking at your Purple Henley Latin book, there's going to be some things that are in boxes when you're doing your reading. And the things in the boxes are important rules for you to learn and memorize. So here are some of the rules that we've already talked about that are in the first lesson that I'm just going to mention. All nouns whose genitive ends in AE are in the first declension. So that's how we know it's a first declension word. You're going to be looking at that genitive singular in your vocabulary to learn which declension it is. Very important. The verb usually stands last in the sentence. So we'll have the nominative, we'll have the accusative, and then we'll have the verb. The subject of the finite verb is in the nominative case. We've been talking about that. So it'll have a nominative ending, either in singular or plural, always. Well, unless it's contained in the verb. But if it's not contained, if it's not a pronoun contained in the verb, then that's what it's talking about. A finite verb agrees with its subject in number and in person. So we've talked about first, second, third person. And then we've talked about its number, singular or plural. So those will agree. The direct object of a transitive verb is in the accusative case. The next thing we're going to talk about, I think, is the accusative case. Okay, so and we've already been talking about the accusative case before, but this is the sailors praised Mary. So like I said, we're going to have the nominative first, then we're going to have the accusative, then we're going to have the verb. And the accusative has the am, so that's how we know that it's the accusative. In this subject, Mary is the direct object of the verb praise. In English, Mary is in the objective case. In Latin, the objective case, direct object, is called the accusative case. All right, so this is worksheet number 2, and the vocab words are on this screen. So if you don't have the worksheet in front of you, you'll want to pause the video here and write these down on paper. And then, or you might want to pause it on this screen to have the vocabulary words. Or you might have to go back and forth with your rewind button. So I'm going to pause my talking right now to let you guys pause, and then we'll come back and discuss. Okay, I assume that you've paused and unpaused me, and you've done your worksheet. So we're going to talk about the answers. We're going to translate those. Maria orat, Mary prays. So it could also be Mary is praying or Mary does pray. Those would be acceptable translations as well. So we know that Mariae, we know that that A is nominative. We know it's singular. Mary prays. Natai orant, the sailors pray or sailors pray. Either one. Sometimes we don't know whether to put the V or don't put the V. So, but the rule of thumb is just to try to make it be good English. Natai teram laudant. This was practiced with your accusative case. Natai was in your nominative, plural, with sailors, praise, and it's got the NT on the end because it's plural. And then teram, that's singular, accusative. So the land, the sailors praise the land. Nata portam, read it. A sailor sees the gate. All right. Translating English to Latin and Latin to English. In order to translate English to Latin, it's important to first parse the sentence, which we've done several times throughout talking in this video. But you're going to look at the sailors gave Mary the land. So if you're not used to the question confirmation, you're going to, you need to know what the subject is. Right now, in the very beginning, you need to know how to identify the subject of the sentence, the direct object, the verb, and the indirect object. If these are foreign words for you, then you'll need to talk to your parent teacher and maybe take a couple of English grammar videos like Grammar Revolution, or just, you know, YouTube, like what's a direct object or things like that. But you'll need to be able to identify those words in English in order to be able to successfully do Latin. There's 8 parts of speech. You should have those memorized and be able to identify them in sentences. That's very important before you start Latin. So hopefully your grammar program up to that point has helped you with that. All right, so parse the sentence. Identify each word in the sentence. All right, let's translate. So let's go ahead and parse it. What is the sentence about? It's about sailors. What do we know about sailors? We know that it's plural. We know it's a noun. We know it's the subject of the sentence. So what is being said about the sailors? The sailors gave. The sailors gave who or what? Now this is where people got confused in Essential sometimes. They would say Mary. So, but the sailors, so you got to look at the whole sentence. The sailors are not giving Mary. They kind of go to the next noun and they just say Mary. Nope. The sailors gave land. So that's the direct object. You got to skip over. The sailors gave land. That's our direct object. To who or for who? For what? Mary. So that's our indirect object. So let's translate this together by adding the correct endings. So I don't have, this is not a whiteboard, so I can't do this very easily. But sailors, that's plural. So it's going to be not I, with an AE on the end, because that's the nominative plural. Gave is going to be provided to you in the, do I end up saying? All right. We don't need to worry about how to conjugate the verb. It will tell you that didierunt means they gave. So that's provided to you in your vocabulary. You're going to learn that didierunt means they gave. So that's how you're going to know that. And then, if I went too far, there's the answer. Land, that's singular, the direct object, so we're going to use accusative. So we're going to put on the AM. So that's teram right here. And then Mary is the indirect object, singular, so we're going to look at the dative singular ending, and that's AE. So you have the sailors gave the land to Mary, or the sailors gave Mary the land. All right, let's look at the same sentence and try to translate it back into English and see how we do. So first we're going to see what's the subject. You know, is there a subject, or is it contained in the verb? That's one of the things you got to look at. So we do have a subject. We have the AE, and it's right here at the beginning of the sentence, so it's probably the subject. So we know that that's sailors with an S on the end. And then normally after I find the subject, that's when I start looking for the verb, because usually the verb in English is kind of near the subject. So what's the verb? Gave. All right, sailors gave. And then who did they give what to? I'm looking for the accusative now, and it's teram. And then that's in our dative, so that's our indirect object. Now, Family Latin is not going to try to confuse you. They're going to try to make pretty basic sentences. I made up this sentence off the top of my head, and so it might not be the best example sentence, because look at this AE right here. That could be, like, how do you know if the subject is sailor or if the subject is Mary? Well, I'm going to guess that it's sailors, because sailors is at the beginning of the sentence. So that's my first guess of why. But then that also could be plural. So how do I know that this is not the sailors of Mary or Mary's sailors? So sometimes it'll be kind of hard, because you're like, that has the same ending. But normally they're trying to give you basic sentence where you're not having to guess. And so normally this type of sentence right now will come right, like it'll come right in the middle of an exercise where you're learning about indirect objects. So if you're learning about indirect objects, then you have an exercise about indirect objects. That exercise will probably have a lot of indirect objects. So right at the beginning, you can kind of guess what the exercises are going to be like, because they're going to follow exactly what you just learned. And they're not going to, right now in this part of the book, like you may not have even talked very much about the genitive case. That's probably not going to be the genitive case. But then when you do get to the genitive, then all the endings will usually be the genitive and not the indirect object. So they try not to confuse you. They try to give you simple sentences, but do know that there are times where, because of the other endings, it might be a little confusing. But don't worry about it. Just do your best and try to answer it the best way you can. And then when you're going it over with your parent on like when you're using the answer key to go over, you can see, oh, I see, like I took it as the genitive, but it was really the dative, and like that's going to happen that happens to me all the time. So just bear with it, and you know, don't be upset if you can't get it perfectly right, because there are going to be times when you're translating, and as you learn and as you translate, the more and more, like, it'll get easier. But just remember that you're going through Henley Latin, this very first purple book that you're doing right here. You guys go through this book 3 times in different stages, and so you're just going to keep practicing, and it'll just come easier. That by the time you get to the next Henley book, you will have learned a lot of this. So in the beginning, it might be confusing, but I'm just trying to encourage you that it's probably not going to be confusing. And they don't do things like this, actually, where they give you a sentence and then try to get you to put it back. So I don't know why I'm doing it, but just to show you that it can be confusing, but it doesn't need to be. All right, moving on to making vocabulary cards. Now this slide, and all my slides are available as notes on my website, so you could print this out if you wanted to, but these are 2 different examples. This blue side over here, that's the side I use. And these are the important things that you have. I'll tell you what's important that you have to have on the vocabulary card. One is, on the front of your card, you're always going to put the nominative singular and the genitive singular. And that's the way it's listed in your book. You're always going to put that for nouns, okay? On the back of the card, there's 3 things you have to have. You have to have the definition, English translation. You have to know which declension it's in, first declension. Now, if you don't happen to put this on, you'll still know that it's first declension, because all first declension words are going to end in AE in the genitive singular. Even if you forget, eventually you'll just learn that that is the case, even if you don't put it on the back. And then the gender, which is masculine. We didn't really talk about gender in this. You'll get to gender in your course, but we didn't talk about it in here. But this particular word is masculine because sailors were usually men back in this time period. So that's why it's masculine. Most words, unless it's referring to them in the first declension, most words are feminine unless they're specifically talking about a male person. So like terra, terrae, which means land. I mean, land is not, you know, a girl, but it's feminine in Latin first declension. So that's just the way it is. But if you are talking about, so I think for right now, nata natai is the only masculine word you'll have in first declension. So that's an easy one. And then English derivatives, they kind of put some of these in your vocabulary, like related English words, I think is what they call it. So you could put those on your vocab card, but you don't have to. You could put the lesson number that might help you find it again if you need to find it again. You could put the page number up here. That's up to you, but you do need to put the declension, the definition, and the gender. And then on the front, you'll need the nominative singular and the genitive singular. You don't need to identify them, just every noun's going to look at that. Now, this side is a little bit different. I don't do it this way, but they have the same sort of concept. Now this, instead of writing it on the card, they actually have like different cards, like pink cards, blue cards, yellow cards. I tend to color coordinate my cards by declension, not by their gender. So I didn't do that. I write the gender on the card, but then I might have different colors for declensions or different colors for verb conjugations or something like that. So, but their information's still the same. The nominative, the gender, the definition, the declension. They've got the page number. But what they do differently, and some directors might encourage you to do this, is they went ahead and declined the whole word out on the vocabulary card. that's a great practice thing to do for each vocab card. So if you have room on your vocab card, that is certainly not a bad thing to do. All right. All right, and that is the end of my slideshow. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about real quick before we end here is we're going to talk about what your assignments are going to look like. Now, because you're new to Challenge A, you may not have seen this before, but this is your pretty much your assignment guide. This is called your Challenge A guide, and it's going to tell you your assignments for every single subject. You've got 6 subjects. So I'm going to briefly tell you what an assignment in Latin looks like and what you're going to do with it. Information it gives. So you actually have some homework due on the first day of class, and that's going to be listed on day 1. So here's my day 1 right here. And this is what's due for Latin. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you what it is. All right, so right here in this corner, you're going to have Henley First Year, pages 1 through 7. That is your reading assignment. So you need to make sure you read pages 1 through 7. So each week it's going to have a reading assignment for you. The next it's going to say Henley Grammar, numbers 31 through 33. This is on page 5. We just talked about it when we did our exercises. This is page 5 of your blue Henley Grammar book. So there's 2 different books. There's your purple book and your blue book. So this is your grammar book. And you're going to have things assigned in them every single week. Now you'll need to talk to your parent about your best learning style of how you want to learn these. Your teacher might have you copy them. It's a great thing, kind of like you did your essentials charts. You might want to copy them. You might want to, at the very least, you should read them. You might want to say them out loud. I have some grammar flashcards on my website. There's different ways to learn these grammar rules, but it's very important that you learn them. Okay, moving on with the assignments. Then we have Henley Grammar pages 1 through 5. So it tells you some additional pages to read in your Henley Grammar book, and Latin Workspace A. Now, you don't have to have the Latin Workspace A, so talk to your parent about what you're going to use for that. I have workbooks on my website. You could just use a spiral notebook and just copy your exercises, but that's a place where you'll copy your exercises and maybe copy some charts. But there's different resources available for that. So then it says, your assignments. Read the assigned pages in Henley First Year Latin text. And it says it's purple. That's your purple book. Make flashcards for new vocabulary and review all flashcards weekly. So they're going to have a set of flashcards. So I know on week 1, I think it's just on page 7, you're going to have vocab that you'll need to make a flashcard for. Copy and learn all assigned grammar rules in Henley Grammar, the blue book, including all noun declensions and verb conjugations. You're not getting to verb conjugations yet, but you will. And CC's recommending that you copy them. Then you're going to complete the exercises assigned. You're going to complete any assigned readings. And you're going to check your answers and correct with the Henley First Year answer key, which is the white book. There's different answer keys available, so yours might not be a white book. It looks like for the very first week of class, you're only going to have to do the reading and making your flashcard and learning the vocabulary rules, the grammar rules. When you get to week 2, again, more reading pages 1 through 19. Grammar lists out each number, and the grammar rules, the numbers are the number of the rule, not the page number. And then it says read the assigned lesson, copy and learn new grammar rules, make flashcards and memorize new vocabulary from lesson 1. That's your purple book. Review and memorize previous vocabulary, that would be last week's, and then complete exercises 2, 5 through 9, and 11. So that's week 2. So your exercises are going to look like that. Your assignment's going to look like that every week. So you're going to have 4 things that you're going to do each week. You're going to do your reading. You're going to learn your grammar. You're going to make your vocabulary flashcards. And you're going to do your exercises and check them with the answer key. Maybe your parent will check them. Maybe the parent will have you check them. You'll have to talk to your parent teacher about that, what's best for you guys. So that is the end of my Latin boot camp. Hopefully it all made sense, and if it didn't make sense, please contact me and I'll be happy to help you further. So I hope that was helpful for you, just to kind of give you an overview of how those noun endings are used, what's the main focus. And so this was fun. And again, contact me with questions. Bye, guys.